They told you it was nothing, just weather balloons, just misidentified aircraft, just tricks of light in a nervous sky. But the moment the first sealed archive was opened and the ink of decades-old signatures met the air again, something else came with it, something that was never meant to leave the vault. And if you listen closely, you can almost hear the hum of fluorescent lights in underground corridors where men with clearance levels instead of names once argued in whispers about objects that moved without wings, without heat signatures, without mercy. The phrase, declassified UFO files, sounds harmless, almost boring, like paperwork, like bureaucracy. But inside those pages are pilot testimonies that tremble between lines, radar logs that show impossible right-angle turns at hypersonic speeds, photographs stamped with dates that were never supposed to see daylight, and every document carries the same quiet infection, uncertainty. In 2020, when the United States Department of Defense acknowledged the existence of the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, it felt like a crack in a dam that had held back 70 years of silence, and behind that crack was the memory of incidents like Roswell incident, a ranch, scattered debris, and a press release that changed overnight from flying disc to weather balloon, a correction so abrupt it left a scar in public trust that never healed. But Roswell was only the beginning, a prologue written in desert dust, because what the declassified files reveal is not one mistake, not one misidentification, but a pattern, a repetition of encounters over oceans and deserts and explainable skies that suddenly refused to behave, like during the Phoenix Lights when thousands looked up at a formation that moved in silence across the night, too large, too structured, too deliberate to dismiss as flares no matter how many officials insisted otherwise. You read the transcripts of fighter pilots describing craft that hovered without visible propulsion, that accelerated from standstill to vanishing point in less time than it takes to inhale, and you notice the way their language changes, how trained professionals accustomed to missile locks and Mach numbers begin to sound like children explaining a nightmare, how they say, "It reacted to us," how they say, "It knew we were there." In 2017, when the New York Times published the now famous videos, grainy infrared footage labeled FLIR-1, Gimbal, Go Fast, the world finally saw what had been hidden in classified briefings, and the Pentagon confirmed their authenticity, confirming not aliens, not origins, but something far more unsettling, that these objects were real, that they were recorded, that they outperformed known technology, and that no one could say who controlled them. The declassified files do not scream, they whisper, and that is what makes them dangerous, because between blacked-out lines and redacted paragraphs you glimpse discussions about non-human intelligence, about materials that exhibit layered isotopic ratios not found in known manufacturing processes, about crash retrieval programs rumored to predate the Cold War. And every time a paragraph ends abruptly in thick black ink, your mind fills in what was removed, and what your mind invents is often worse than any official statement. There are memoranda referencing the Federal Bureau of Investigation investigating unidentified aerial phenomena near sensitive nuclear installations, reports of objects hovering over missile silos, systems temporarily disabled, launch codes rendered inert for minutes that felt like eternity, and technicians who swore the shutdown was not a malfunction but an intrusion, a demonstration. Think about that for a moment. Something unknown hovering over humanity's most destructive weapons, as if examining them, as if assessing whether we deserve them. The files describe objects entering water without splash, moving beneath the surface at speeds submarines cannot match, suggesting a domain beyond air, beyond sea, beyond our categories, and some documents use a term that chills more than UFO ever could. UAP, unidentified aerial phenomena, as if renaming the mystery could domesticate it, as if a new acronym could make the impossible behave. Yet the deeper you read, the more the pattern tightens, sightings clustered around military exercises, around technological breakthroughs, around moments in history when humanity seemed poised to leap forward or destroy itself, and you begin to wonder whether these appearances are random or reactive, whether we are being observed not casually but clinically. The Central Intelligence Agency archives include Cold War reports from Europe and South America, radar operators tracking luminous spheres that split into multiple targets and recombined, as if physics were optional, as if inertia were a suggestion rather than a law, and each time jets were scrambled, the objects would ascend beyond reach, leaving behind only stunned silence and instruments that insisted what had been seen was real. Skeptics argue secret technology, black projects hidden within black budgets, but the declassified discussions themselves often dismiss that explanation, noting that no known adversary possessed such capabilities, that to assume human origin would imply a technological gap so vast it borders on science fiction, and so the question lingers like a shadow that grows longer with every page. If not us, then who? The horror is not in green men or cinematic invasions, it is in ambiguity, in the admission that those entrusted with national security looked into classified briefings and could not provide answers. That committees were formed, dissolved, renamed, that programs like ADIP operated in obscurity not because they had solved the mystery but because they had not. When you read about encounters off the coast where Navy pilots described a tic-tac shaped object descending from 60,000 feet to sea level in seconds, without visible means of lift, you feel the ground shift slightly beneath the narrative of human dominance, because air superiority has long been a pillar of military power, and these objects treated it like a toy. The declassified files also reveal fear not of attack but of vulnerability, internal memos worrying that repeated incursions into restricted airspace demonstrated a gap in detection and response, that something could enter, observe, and leave at will, and if it wished, could do more than observe. The scariest lines are often the simplest, like, intent unknown, stamped beneath a sighting summary, because intent is what separates curiosity from threat, and when intent is unknown, every possibility remains open. Imagine sitting in a secure briefing room, fluorescent lights humming, as a projector displays footage of an object that defies aerodynamic principles, and a senior official clears his throat and admits, "We don't know what this is," and realize that those words, spoken behind closed doors for decades, have only recently begun to seep into public awareness. The government did not want these files public not because they confirmed aliens, but because they confirmed ignorance, and ignorance at the highest levels of power is a vulnerability that no nation likes to display. As you move deeper into the archives, the tone shifts from dismissal to cautious acknowledgement, from jokes about swamp gas to structured task forces and congressional briefings, and that evolution itself is terrifying, because institutions do not change language without reason. The formation of dedicated UAP task forces signaled that the phenomenon persisted, that it was not fading into folklore but escalating into something that demanded resources, analysts, funding, and above all secrecy. And secrecy breeds imagination, and imagination breeds fear. But the documents suggest the fear was not confined to the public. It was present in the margins of classified reports, in phrases like, "capabilities beyond known technology," in acknowledgments that these craft displayed acceleration forces that would liquefy a human pilot, implying either autonomous control or biology unlike ours. The more you read, the more you sense that the scariest possibility is not invasion but indifference, that whatever intelligence might be behind these phenomena does not need to hide perfectly because it does not consider us a threat, that we are observed the way we observe wildlife, catalogued, monitored, perhaps even subtly influenced. Some declassified assessments speculate about advanced sensor artifacts, about misinterpretations, about human error, and yet they continue to circle back to cases that resist explanation, cases corroborated by multiple independent systems, visual, infrared, radar, cases that persist like a splinter under the skin of official narratives. You close one file and open another, and the pattern repeats across decades, across administrations, across political divides, suggesting that whatever this is, it transcends partisan lines, it transcends ideologies, it exists in the cold airspace above them all. And as the final pages of each report trail off into redaction, you are left not with answers but with a widening question, a realization that the sky, once mapped and conquered and divided into controlled sectors, still holds corridors we do not command. The fear grows slowly, not from a single revelation but from accumulation, from the weight of testimony and the persistence of mystery. Until you begin to look up differently at night, not searching for lights but wondering who else might be searching for you, because the true horror of the declassified UFO files is not that the government hid monsters, it is that they opened the vault and found a mirror reflecting their own uncertainty. And in that uncertainty lies a truth more chilling than any invasion. We are not alone in our skies. And we have no idea what shares them with us.